Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 10th of February. God, this year's racing by. And joining me this edition is Steve Withers.
I am Spartacus.
Ed Selley.
No, I'm Spartacus.
And Mark Botwright.
No, I'm Spartacus.
And I think I'd be happy with a 103-year innings. There's just no way I'm getting that long. No. Kirk Douglas passed on. He's had a great innings, great career. Looks like he's had a great life. And he's left. Absolutely. He's one of the last, I think, Hollywood superstars.
He literally was the last of the great Hollywood stars. He was a legend. I do feel a bit bad though, because I think I might have jinxed him. Because on Tuesday, I just finished rewatching the TV series Spartacus, and I was thinking about the film, and I knew Kirk was getting on a bit, and I thought, is anybody else still alive from that film? So I went through the cast list, and he was the only major person involved in that film who was still alive. This is what I was looking at on Wednesday. Next morning, dead. So I think I might have jinxed him. So sorry, Kirk.
It's possible. I mean, it's less decisive than, say, I don't know, creeping into his house in the middle of the night and smothering him. So
it could have been something like a coincidence, maybe.
Yes, I'm sure it was a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think at 103 anyone's saying taken from us cruelly.
Yeah, he had a good life. I don't think he's got any complaints.
Had a hell of a career, though. If you look at the types of films he made, there's just about everything on there. You know, you kind of had those pub conversations about kind of who had the better career. Kirk Douglas did just about everything. Yeah. You know, noirs, westerns, kind of biopics, sports films, epics. Everything there, and his role in bringing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of to fruition as well. It was just one of those actors.
And Breaking the Blacklist, because he hired Dalton Trumbo for Spartacus and allowed him to use his real name.
Yep.
So he played his part in Breaking the Blacklist. Done some fantastic films. Ace in the Hole is a brilliant film. Paths of Glory, of course. And
my story
favourite, my personal favourite, The Final Countdown.
Oh, yeah.
The one where the USS Nimitz goes back in time and ends up right before Pearl Harbor, which I really like.
I've got to admit, I do, as far as guilty pleasures go, I do quite like Saturn 3.
Oh, yeah, and Saturn 3. Yes. Which bizarrely was directed by Stanley Donen, of all people, who replaced John Barry, who was the production designer on Star Wars and Empire, who sadly died a couple of weeks into shooting. And they had to bring in Stanley Donen, of all people, who only died quite recently as well. So some long-lived individuals on that film. It is inevitable, yes.
Yes.
103 is not bad, is it?
You say it's inevitable, but I was starting to wonder with Kirk Douglas. I
thought he was going to go for the record. I don't know what the oldest person to ever live is, but I think he was having a good old crack at it.
I think it's 115 point something.
No, it's more than that. Someone has made it to 120.
Really? All right.
Yeah, but they're usually not quite sure when they were actually
I was going to say that's usually
time.
rural China or something, and it's written down on a tablet.
Yeah. Right, okay. It's a bit blowy today. Don't know if anybody's noticed. I know Ed noticed because he's had a full rant on Twitter that I've been following about SUVs. We'll get to that in a second. I've been sitting watching Big Jet TV. Didn't even know it existed. Somebody pointed it out on Facebook and said there's hell on at Heathrow today, and they were sitting watching the planes coming into land. And I'm thinking, I'll look at this. So I cracked up the C9, the YouTube app, punched in Big Jet TV, and right enough, there's this guy, complete amateur, standing on a hill or a paddock outside Heathrow with his camera with a long zoom lens, watching all the planes coming in. And there must have been
live streaming from up there.
Yeah, he was live streaming on it, and the picture quality was pretty decent, and you could hear what he was saying amongst the wind. And the thing was, there must have been about 27 go-arounds. There was one touch and go at 777. It looked like it was going to crash, to be honest. It was scary. It hit the runway and then just full throttle again and away. It was fascinating watching. Absolutely fascinating. Even though it was complete amateur town in terms of this guy standing in this paddock outside Heathrow. It was amazing watching these planes coming in and how close some of them were getting to wings clipping the runway and stuff as they were coming in as well.
Does he do this all the time, or is it just when it's horrible weather?
He does it all the time. So I looked into it after I've been watching it for a little while just to see if it was just a one-off. But no, he's big YouTube following, big Twitter following, and he has paid subscriptions, and he goes all over the world. He goes to airports all over the world and just film. It's like proper train spotting, but with planes. And he looks at it. He's actually really quite knowledgeable, so he can tell what the kind of plane it is, and he's telling you this as it's coming into land as well. So he's giving you a bit of knowledge. A cracking TV. I think it would make an amazing TV channel. Just going to different airports and watching the planes coming and going. It's fascinating watching them.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've seen some clips, and there's been people linking to that Flight Radar website. With some decidedly interesting flight profiles of stuff coming in and out of places.
Yeah,
as
well,
there
was a few diversions. There was a A380 had 3 attempts and then ended up in Manchester.
That was a hell of
had to divert to Manchester in the end, and so on. And there was a tail strike as well. A Qantas jet taken off. The tail struck the runway, it was taken off, and it had to circle around and around and around to burn off enough fuel before it could come back in. Because obviously it was setting off for Australia, so it was absolutely packed with fuel. So they had to burn off quite a bit because they weren't out over the ocean, so they weren't allowed to dump it. So
did you see a 747 last night? Did JFK to?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that it set the new
4
record.
4 hours 53.
Yeah,
Bloody
2 hours.
hell.
2 hours quicker than it should have been. But there was that year we came back with Norwegian from Vegas, and there was a Norwegian jet set the record.
Yeah, well, that was
didn't
the previous record holder,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we were in 3rd place, although it doesn't technically count because we weren't. It's measured as JFK to Heathrow, and obviously we'd taken off from a different location. But our Atlantic crossing time was much the same. Well, it was within minutes of that other Norwegian flight, but this one is another like 6 or 7 minutes off. It's ridiculous. So yeah, most impressive.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing today.
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, I was down at my parents' because it was my mum's 70th birthday today. It's very pleasant. But we, my son and I, we drove back through the tail end of the weather. And as Phil noted, I pointed this out on Twitter. It's not something I'd want to do every single day, but I don't regard the conditions as being, especially by the tail this afternoon, they were lively but fine. But I say that as someone that drives a car, because there were points on the A34 today where you get a big old gust of wind and you could feel it and you'd need to apply a little bit of correction, and you could see the other cars around you feel it and apply a little bit of correction. Every bloody SUV in the same group of vehicles was moving around like the driver was off his face.
That's what happens when you got high-sided vehicles.
Exactly, but it's just adding an unnecessary extra sort of burden of driving.
Yeah.
Again for this sort of false perceived feeling of safety,
I've
which
seen
presumably.
I've seen some really stupid things on the motorway when it's hit high winds. So you've got 2 lorries, lane 1, lane 2, and you've got idiots sitting static next to them in lane 3 in high winds, and you're thinking, well, all it takes is one wind blow, mate, and you're gone. Because that lorry's going to move over and you're crushed. But people just don't think.
No. So yeah, it was really weird, but no, I mean, there's always the excitement when you're away from your own house during weather events like this. What are you going to come back to? Your house or a smoking hole in the ground? Mercifully, it's still here and appears to be okay. I did like that. There was the train down near Guildford that was hit by a trampoline. Which probably came as a bit of a surprise to the driver.
Yeah, I did see a post on Facebook where somebody was selling 6 trampolines and loads of garden furniture and stuff, and the last line was stock coming every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it's very unusual for us to have a weather event where we all get to chime in at the same time. But there you go. It's been a lively day. It's still raining here. It seems to have calmed down a bit. I don't know what it's like for you guys, but I mean, I'm quite a long way inland. I don't know what it's like for you southwest types. If it's still lively down there,
It's still a bit lively down here, yeah.
Yeah, but I still wouldn't go commissioning a British version of Storm Chasers, though.
No. I think that's probably
We
fair.
will rebuild.
Yeah. Ironically, I was listening to a playlist of like film score bits. It did play The Day After Tomorrow at me at one point, which I thought was quite fun. But no, I say if provided that one pays attention, I didn't think it was. Well, I mean, certainly in my part of the UK, I didn't think it was too bad driving back. But that's because I'm in a car.
Did your film scores play back 2012?
No, because I don't think that's a particularly good score. The Day After Tomorrow is it's not a significantly better film, although it is a little bit better than 2012. But the actual main score for Day After Tomorrow is a bit of a beaut. Actually, I think it's a really good piece of music.
I was reading an article today that had convinced a few people online, so I went and read it, that the world actually ended in 2012 when they found the Higgs boson. And we're now in an alternative universe. That's why we've got Trump as president of the US and so on. It didn't make any sense whatsoever, but it convinced people online. You just think, how stupid are people online?
That would explain a lot. That would make so perhaps Bowie's not dead then.
Well, he is in this
timeline,
universe,
in the one we've blown up. But yeah, I think Bowie passing was definitely the clue that something had gone seriously wrong with the space-time continuum.
Was that 2012?
No, 2016, and then obviously it started the 2016 year where everyone died.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were
the prominence of flat earthers was the clue for me.
Yes.
One of them tweeted a few weeks ago that he had support all over the globe.
And then, I mean, obviously, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's ever seen any of it, but last night, out of a sense of morbid fascination, we watched some of The Masked Singer. So yeah, I think there is a certain element that we are now in a very strange and dismal timeline indeed, where we, spend parts of the public spend. I mean, last night it was Denise Van Outen and CeeLo Green, but I believe the week before it was Teddy Sheringham. As you do. So. Yeah, there are arguments that we do that it may be that we blew the universe inside out and we're now in the Bizarro world timeline. It makes no less sense than anything else. So we're fine, whatever.
Right, so we haven't heard from Mark in about 4 or 5 weeks. So what you been up to?
Had a nice little Christmas. I don't think I've spoken to you since Christmas actually.
Yeah. Is that right? I thought you were on in January, but you're not. Some point?
No, I don't think so.
I have no idea. Either way, yeah, nice, quiet Christmas, carrying on with house stuff. In not this wind, but the previous big wind that came along, the whole fence went for a Burton, so that was quite fun. So with the next door neighbour, it was like we were kind of preparing for some kind of apocalypse, just kind of bracing it with old pieces of wood and, hammering in nails and lashing it to things. And surprisingly, though, just kind of hammering in as much wood as you possibly can into a fence makes it remarkably sturdy. It's been fine this time. Yeah, and that's largely the biggest thing I've done, I'm afraid.
You've done nothing else for 5 weeks.
Well, all right. Well, my sister wants me to sand her staircase and completely redo that, so I've been doing that quite often. But unfortunately, she's got cats that destroy things, so the amount of wood filler I'm putting into it, it's kind of like, painting the Forth Bridge type thing. And so I'm fairly sure it's now more filler than wood. But yeah, that will get done. Beyond that, it's largely been cursing the fact that the plaster in the downstairs room doesn't seem to have dried out properly. So I've got to look at fitting some kind of an air brick or something like that. But, if there are any plasters out there, then pop into the comments and tell me what I'm doing wrong.
If you want to keep cats off work that you're doing at any time, just put tinfoil down.
What? Like a little kind of...
They won't walk on
like a circle of salt or something.
No, if you've got something, if it's like, I don't know if I contextually you're talking about DIY, you might as well be talking in Urdu. But if it's only vulnerable for a bit whilst you're doing some work on it, you can cover what you're working on in tinfoil, and cats won't walk on it.
Well, that's good to know.
And it does genuinely seem to work. Don't ask me why. They don't walk on tinfoil.
Is that a bit like slugs don't go over sellotape?
Well, I can understand why slugs don't go over sellotape. I mean, in terms of traction, that's going to be a problem. But cats don't walk on tinfoil. I mean, obviously, it's not a substance that occurs in nature. There's a degree of logic to it. But no, I remember as a 12-year-old spending some time, humiliating my cats with sheets of tinfoil. So yeah, it works. And no doubt, if you do have a cat that stands on tinfoil, you can let us know in the comments as well. But failing that, just experiment.
The AVForums podcast, full of useless shit. And moving on to Steve.
I haven't really done much, actually, to be honest. Watched rugby yesterday, which was entertaining given the weather.
Been loads
kick
of
the
sports
ball
on TV
and it would go
since
back the
Christmas.
wrong way. Yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's been loads of sports on since Christmas. That's actually probably why I've done nothing.
No,
Yeah, well, I want you done last week because we were going to talk Super Bowl, but you weren't here, so.
You know what? I only stayed up till half time.
Yeah, so did I. I gave up after that.
Yeah, I was fully planning to. Yes, this is, and then as the kind of evening wore on, I just thought my bed looks too inviting.
Yeah, I got to the point where
the halftime show, and I just thought, I hate this, and I can't sit here waiting for it. It's almost like the longest ad break I've ever seen. And then like J-Lo comes out, and I just think, no.
Yeah, in years gone by, I've made it to the end of the game, but I wanted to see this game because obviously I knew they were going to come back. I just knew that was going to happen, but in one way or another. But I couldn't manage it. My eyes were just too heavy. So yeah, what did you think though?
What of the game?
Yeah,
fantastic, and as ever, I've bang on about it, but BBC's coverage was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it was one of those. I wanted the 49ers to win, and I just felt like it was one of those games where the longer it went on, the Chiefs were going to come back anyway. But they haven't won it in 50 years, so that's kind of fair enough. And Andy Reid winning it as well. But yeah, all round, just it kind of capped off just all round great coverage. But it does, it kind of strikes you just how much the BBC's coverage kind of takes out a certain degree of. And I don't mean this necessarily as a huge pejorative, but the Americanism of their kind of broadcast style, so therefore once you get the kind of straightforward, here's the halftime show, here's this, that, and the other, and you kind of go, this is why I didn't used to watch this. This is why I didn't pay attention. You want it presented in a style that's, for want of a better term, kind of more palatable to a British audience,
Yeah, no, I can see where you're getting from, but I really enjoyed the playoff games because I watched them when I was in Vegas, and actually watching them on the host broadcaster where you get all the advert breaks and you get all the stuff that they normally cut out of the UK stuff. Really interesting. It's seeing that, and I went through all the trailers. I'm sure Steve did as well. The halftime adverts and trailers and all that. Did you? You go through them all?
Me? Oh
Yeah.
yes. Well, I went through the movie trailers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Top Gun Maverick? I saw Black Widow had one.
There was loads, and even the adverts were really quite entertaining as well. I think there was a Walmart one which was film based, and the amount of stuff they'd gone to was superb. Really, really good. Right, enough chit chat. Let's get down to it. Current competitions. Mark, you've not been around for a while. Crack on.
Okay. First few are Blu-rays and all ending on the 18th of February. We've got a copy of Downton Abbey, the movie, as well as Monty Python's Flying Circus Season 2 and The Courier. Then for 19th of February, we've got a couple more Blu-rays. We've got a copy of Cujo and 8.5. And then for 25th of February, we've got Boys in the Hood on 4K Ultra HD and Judy on Blu-ray. And then also we've got a copy of Little Monsters on Blu-ray for 25th of February as well. And on the 26th, a copy of Bliss on Blu-ray.
So lots of different things there. Lots of more competitions are open or being added daily. So head over to avforums.com/competitions to enter even more. And they're eligible to everyone except Phil. So get stuck in.
And as long as you're resident in the UK.
Yeah.
None confirmed.
Okay, there might be some next week, hopefully. Right, we'll be back in a sec with hardware. Right, moving on to hardware. I think we're going to be quite quick here because the product that Steve's reviewing, I've already reviewed on the site. The reason that Steve was reviewing it is because it's the 77-inch version, and there are fewer versions at that screen size. So 55 and 65 is normal. And I guess the interesting thing was, is there a difference between the 65 and going up to the 77? Because it's more real estate, it's more screen. Can it produce the same performance? Can it produce the same brightness? So Steve's had a look through all of my data on the stuff,
yes,
and then done his own measurements and so on. So what did you think, Steve?
Basically exactly the same. I mean, I was slightly concerned that trying to energize a panel that large, and 77 inches is a lot of real estate, it would struggle to reach the same peak brightness levels as the 55, which I reviewed for other publications, and the 65 that you reviewed, where they would struggle to meet them. But no, it could hit 720 nits on
which
a
is
10%
actually
window.
which is actually more than the 65 was, or the 65 sample I had.
Yeah, I mean they obviously they vary from panel to panel, but generally the majority of 2019 OLED TVs will hit around about 700 nits.
Yeah,
there are exceptions to that, but that seems to be the average peak brightness.
That's what LG used to do the tone mapping. So
yeah,
they use 700.
700, and you can change it if you run the autocal. But yeah, it was 720 nits, and so I was delighted with that. In terms of its out of the box accuracy, and I completely factory reset this before I started testing it and set it up and everything. The average delta E's were less than 1 on the grayscale and the gamma, so that was impressive. And then all less than 3, most less than 2 on the colours as well. So I think I've got to say, and that's that you could say, oh, well, that's just a sample they sent you, but I'm basing that on not just the 55 that I reviewed, the 65 that you reviewed, this 77-inch, and C9s that I've calibrated out in the wild. That's not uncommon. Less than 3 has certainly been the norm, and less than 2 is quite common. So LG are doing a bang-up job this year of delivering really superb out-of-the-box. Actually, of course, this is in ISF darkroom. You could also use ISF bright room. If you use Technicolor, don't forget to change the white balance setting from warm 1 to warm 2. But otherwise, the accuracy is quite exceptional. So that was impressive. And the same goes for HDR as well, actually. I mean, the HDR performance, again, not just the peak brightness, but the overall performance in terms of tone mapping, absolutely spot on. And up to its 700 nits, it tracks that PQ curve precisely. And then the color tracking also very good. I mean, there are a few minor errors in there, but pretty much, as with the C9 that you saw as well, I think, Phil, 98% coverage of DCI-P3, and good tracking, and overall it's a really, really impressive TV. I mean, that's the reason why it won best TV in the Editor's Choice Awards. I think that was a deserved win because it's not just the picture quality. I mean, the picture quality is excellent. In terms of accuracy, in terms of the overall performance. I've had no issues with things like flashing or macro blocking, although I will admit that tends to be more source based. So I think Sky Q can be, or Sky generally.
Yeah, I have noticed that recently. Like I was saying to you on a conversation we had last week. I just happened to have ET on, and there was a few scenes in that, and it's supposed to be a UHD presentation from Sky, but obviously the compression that they're using, it set off the flashing. It was a scene where he's building the transmitter to try and reach his family to get them coming back and get them, and the trees and stuff were flickering away, flashing away because of the compression artifacts. So it's very much source based, and if you happen to get a really low compression or low compressed signal, even HD, ITV2 or whatever, seem to be quite bad for setting it off in certain dark scenes. So it's still there, but it's very much source dependent. 99.9% of my viewing don't notice it.
No, I must admit, on the stuff that I've been watching, and generally it's HD channels, 4K content streaming, that kind of thing. I haven't any problems. Haven't any problems with Now TV either, which is pretty compressed. But overall, I mean, and given that it's a 77-inch screen, these kind of things are fairly obvious to spot because it's such a large image. I mean, I know somebody asked the question after last week's podcast, and I mentioned I had this TV. You said, "No, what does the picture quality look like?" Now, with full HD or Blu-rays, looks superb. Looks absolutely superb. Don't worry about a large screen necessarily looking bad. Good source looks fantastic. The upscaling is very effective, and as I said, the picture quality and accuracy and tone mapping, etc. All spot on.
HD to 4K is not difficult to do.
No.
So if it doesn't look good, the manufacturer's making a real.
If
balls
it's going to look
up of it.
crap, it's almost certainly weaknesses in source content. And like crap SD, heavily compressed, isn't going to look good on anything, particularly on a 77-inch screen. But a good source looks absolutely stellar. And as I was saying, not just in terms of the overall picture quality, which is excellent, but also interestingly, it uses a different stand to the 55 and 65 inch. It uses the same stand that was used last year on the C8, which I really like because it's excellent for firing audio directly at the viewer. So again, it sounds good as well for a slim TV. Obviously, being that big, it's got more room for larger drivers. It's got WebOS, of course, which is absolutely brilliant. and it's got a complete selection of streaming services. So you've got Netflix and Amazon and YouTube and all the catch-up services. You've got
Also
Free
got
Play.
Apple now.
Apple got added last week. Currently, it does Dolby Vision, but doesn't currently do Dolby Atmos. But apparently, they will be adding that later in the year. So then, of course, they'll be adding Disney Plus at the end of the month, end of next month, when it goes live in this country. So basically, you've got a full suite of streaming services there. You've got a really brilliant interface in WebOS. I mean, it hasn't been changed much, hardly at all, really, in the last 5 years. But did it need it? I mean, it works really, really well. They've got the Magic Remote, of course, which is fantastic. And I mean, I can't knock it. I think it's an absolute, and of course HDMI 2.1 as well for those who need it either through ARC or maybe for gaming. It's a fantastic television. It really is. I mean, it doesn't have HDR10 plus, but I mean, LG have discussed this when you were interviewing them. Doesn't really need it. And I mean, I'm struggling to find faults with it really.
Yeah.
And obviously, given that the CX will be arriving fairly soon,
C10
next couple of months.
C10, don't call it the CX.
The C10 will be arriving fairly soon. You should be able to pick up this TV at a reasonably attractive price. I mean, at the moment, I think it's $5,999, so just under $6,000. But looking at your alternatives, because you said, Phil, there's not a lot at that screen size. You've got the 77-inch W9, which you can get for just under $8,000, so $7,999. And there's the Sony 77-inch AG9, which is $6,499. So even at just under $6,000, it's still the cheapest option for a 77-inch OLED. And I imagine that price will continue to fall as we approach sort of March, April time when the C10 is going to hit the streets. So
that is absolutely bonkers, isn't it?
Well, it's going to get cheaper, Ed, because they've introduced the 48-inch, and where do they get the 48-inch from? When they cut a 77. So they're going to be cutting more 77s to get 48s.
That'll get the price down.
That's just going to drive the price down.
I think for $6,000, 77-inch C9 is an absolute steal.
Yeah,
I mean, for what you're getting, that is a lot of telly for that money.
Yeah,
literally.
And I mean, if you look at the Panasonics, which are, I would probably put them just above the LGs, but you're talking about minute little things that make them stand out. And even the GZ2000, and obviously we're moving on to the 8Z2000, does a lot of really nice things, and the uniformity is great and all the rest of it. But there's not a major difference. In picture quality.
It's not even an option in that screen size, is it? So
no,
you
not
don't have that
77
choice anyway.
No.
So yes, I'm delighted with it. I have to say it's a superb television, and I think LG are doing some really solid work here with their OLEDs, and not just in terms of picture quality, which is exceptional, but in terms of the overall package. Like I say, as far as WebOS goes, it's got a complete set of every streaming service you're likely to want or need. And they all work, they all work fluidly. There's no delay. It's nice. It's got plenty of processing in there. It's not slow. It's a really intuitive, slick experience.
The one thing I do like about LG, and I think that, amongst all the manufacturers, they seem to be the best at it at the moment, although I've yet to be proved wrong. But when it comes to product support and actually having the technology on board, so they don't normally release a product and then say, and it'll have HDMI 2.1 later in the year or whatever, which a lot of manufacturers have been doing recently, and a lot of them haven't been carrying through with their promises. But if you look at LG, it's got HDMI 2.1 on there, it's got everything on there, and they're not saying, we're going to update later in the year. And I don't think they've ever really sort of done that, LG, have they?
I have to say, they have been extremely good in rolling back upgrades to older televisions. For example, I had a C8 before this C9. Now that doesn't have HDMI 2.1. There's not much I can do about that. That's a hardware thing. But when they brought in built-in Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa into the C9, they also brought it into the C8. The Apple TV update, the Apple TV Plus update that they've just added to the C9, they will be rolling out to the C8, and along with I believe the Disney Plus app might even definitely will go back to C8. It may even go back further than that. So they've been very good at keeping older TVs up to date with new features. If they can do them, they seem to be willing to do them. Because sometimes a manufacturer doesn't update something older because it literally can't. I mean, either the firmware or the hardware. Usually it's the hardware. There's a limitation. Yes, there's a limitation in the hardware, and they just can't do it. Sometimes they can, and they don't do it because they want you to buy the newer TV, and ultimately they are a business. But LG certainly have been extremely good at keeping their older TVs up to date. I mean, I've still got B7 in the bedroom, and that's still pretty much everything. So again, I have no complaints there.
They don't sell things on promises, which is quite annoying because it has happened a few times this last year where manufacturers have said, "Oh, we'll add EARC or we'll add HDMI 2.1."
No. Name some names. I can certainly say that Sony's promise of Dolby Vision took a lot longer than they claimed, and I don't think it was ever initially, when they first launched it, properly integrated, implemented in the way that people expected. And Samsung last year were saying they were going to add. In fact, they said they did add EARC to their soundbars, but that was not the case.
So I guess the advice is, and it's certainly something we're going to make a note of on reviews going forward as well, is if the functionality doesn't exist, don't buy the product thinking that it will be added. You're buying a product and it does what it does and don't expect anything more than that.
If you get something
just
else,
asking
that's
for
a nice
trouble.
bonus, but don't expect it because there's no guarantee, and you end up being disappointed. But I think from my perspective, certainly, unless I can personally confirm it, doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the way it should be in reviews. We'll make a note that the manufacturer is saying that they're going to do it, but
don't mention it.
Don't buy it on that. Don't ever make a purchase on that. And that's something that we have said for quite a number of years now. But I think it needs reinforcing after the last few months. Right, let's move things on. Let's talk about some audio speakers. So let's go to Ed for that, because Ed is our hi-fi reviewer.
Yes, well, apparently, yeah, that's exciting, isn't it? No, I've had a look at the Acoustic Energy AE500 because the timing, and I'd love to say that this is deliberate, but it's not. Steve has just done a multi-channel pack of the 300 series speakers, and they have now been joined by the 500 series of speakers. Steve won't be able to do a multi-channel pack of those because, as it stands, Acoustic Energy is adamant that they have no intention of doing a centre speaker for this range. It's stereo only. The 500 is the stand mount, and then there's a 509 floor stander. It's £1,000 or a quid less than £1,000. And I don't want to give too much away. The review will go up in the fullness of time. Suffice to say, it's an extremely good loudspeaker. It's also an extremely advanced one. It's the first product, and I was going to ask this actually because you guys have had a look at speakers in different contexts to us hi-fi people, whereas Phil never tires of pointing out things happen comparatively slowly. But the AE500 and the 509 have a carbon fiber tweeter. As well as a mid-bass driver, the tweeter itself is made out of carbon fiber. And I don't think I haven't encountered a production speaker with that before. And I don't think there has been a production speaker with that before, unless you guys can remember anything that did that.
Off the top of my head, no.
No, I can't remember off the top of my head either.
No, and I had a dig round, and I do think Acoustic Energy has done something genuinely novel here. And the good news is it's not just novel for novelty's sake. It works. The tonal match between the two drivers is outstanding. The handover is lovely and cohesive. And because Phil and I have discussed what we can do with hi-fi reviews to, that we are aware that, you have other options for some of these things. And in order to keep what we do interesting, we have space and we have context to look at things in a way that aren't necessarily available to some of the competition. So as well as looking at the 500 on its own merits, I've also dug out, because I own a pair, of the original Acoustic Energy AE1s. And it's part of the copy examines why it's both a great loudspeaker and a bit of an albatross for Acoustic Energy, because it's a magnificent loudspeaker provided you ignore all of the many things that are wrong with it. But nevertheless, what they've done here is this is a loudspeaker that does all of the things I would expect a £1,000 stand mount to do. It's beautifully finished. It's very easy to live with. But there's just a little bit of that old magic there as well.
Is it sealed or ported?
It's ported.
Right.
But that said, this is again something that Steve will have had some experience of. Some years ago, Acoustic Energy decided they were going to stop using circular base ports, and they moved over to these slot ports. And they look weird, but they work. It looks like, I mean, if you've got a toddler and they've got access to paper, you're going to be pulling a lot of paper out of your loudspeakers because it looks like a letterbox. But it genuinely works. Essentially, the cabinet is able to be more rigid because there isn't a whacking great hole in it. It's got this narrow, full-width slot at the back of the cabinet, which means that the air velocity through the port itself is comparatively low, so it doesn't chuff. It's proper clever thinking. As again, Steve in his multi-channel review points out, Acoustic Energy is not a massive company. They don't have huge resources, and you know where some of the speaker companies that we look at can do, you know, things where they can engineer themselves up some very clever solutions using materials and production processes that are simply not available to a smaller company. So Acoustic Energy works smart, and it genuinely works. The review will be up in the fullness of time. It's the cheaper of the two loudspeaker reviews I've done this month. You can have 7 pairs of Acoustic Energies for the price of the other pair of loudspeakers I looked at this month. But they are extremely good. And if you are looking for a speaker at that price point, I think it would be well worth your time to devote a little bit of time to the review. And one or two of you may also read the review and decide that actually you need a pair of AE1s in your life. And I don't argue with that either. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, it's always nice to see comparisons done. And if it's a previous model, even better. So, yeah, good stuff. We'll look forward to seeing that. We'll be back in a sec with the AVForums Oscars.
God.
Right, okay. I haven't done any work on this, so while other people are going to be talking, I'll do my Oscars thing. But we've got stuff to go through before we get to that. And the reason we're doing that is at the time of recording, well, not at this time, same evening as we're recording, the Oscars are happening in LA, where it's currently suffering from severe hailstorms at the moment. So, yay, weather. Right.
Isn't it warmer in Antarctica right now?
Yes, there are some vexing. I mean, it's not quite again day after tomorrow where they've got a tornado. Although who knows, the evening isn't the night's but young. So yeah, there are some really weird things. But that said, there was a period of time a few years ago during an abnormally cold snap on the east coast of the United States, and then something weird that we still don't understand was going on with the weather on Mars. It was warmer on Mars than it was in New York.
Wow. There you go.
We can't be blamed for Mars, though, can we? Because we're not there. So
Yeah.
it's not our fault.
No.
And we're stalling because we haven't done any film reviews this week.
Hey, did you not go and see Birds of Prey then?
No, I didn't. However, having read Kamari's review, I'm going to go and see it this week.
Yeah, me too. But my big issue with it has been, and I think that's been reflected in its box office performance, it has not done particularly well. It's underperformed. And I think that's not because it's not a good film or it's got a great cast or anything like that. I think it's because it's been very poorly marketed.
The trailer was
the trailer
absolutely terrible.
But the reviews have been largely good across the board, not just Kamari, but every review I've seen. I was watching Fandom's review of it. And so I'm actually, and everyone says that Ewan McGregor's really funny and really good in it as well. And I know I was slagging him off last week, but I actually quite fancy it now. And in fact, it is quite colourful, because, comic books generally, you think of comic books, you think of something fairly primary colours. So it's once again, she's got a point that a lot of recent comic book films have been quite dour and downbeat, and
in terms of the production design,
in terms of their look and production design, particularly the Snyder's first.
Joker, again, even the Joker.
Yeah, look at the Joker. Yeah, I was hardly laugh a minute, was it? That was pretty like a 1981 movie. So yeah, I think this sounds like it could be good fun. So I actually think I might go and see it this week.
It does. I mean, obviously, it doesn't help. The only outing really thus far for any of the people in it is obviously Margot Robbie's Harlequin, and that's from Suicide Club or whatever.
She was the best thing in it.
Yeah. Well, no, but unfortunately, that's not necessarily so. It's a confused, hurried mess of a film. So, unfortunately, it's a spin-off of something which is in itself a bit, there's a once bitten, twice shy. It's like, oh, well, I saw her in that.
That's what's putting me off, Ed, was the fact that, yeah, okay, she was the best thing in Suicide Squad, but it's hardly enough to, take the whole film. And manage it, but seemingly they've managed to pull it off, and it's not as bad as I'd feared it would be because of the trailer and so on. So yeah, I'm prepared to go and see it this week. Actually,
the best thing in Suicide Squad isn't necessarily a compliment, though, is it?
No, that's what I mean. That's what was kind of putting me off. You know what I mean? That and the really bad trailer.
The most thing in Suicide Squad was Harley Quinn. I would have said certainly, but I thought Margot Robbie was very good in the role, and. So yes, again, also apparently the way they introduce the various characters is done in a much cleverer way than it was in Suicide Squad, which was that sort of route one, just as introdued them with some text
monologue. Yeah,
it was that was a film though where there was clearly an awful lot of interference. And reshoots and post production, stuff. It's like Rise of Skywalker. You could see the studio's fingerprints all over it. I quite fancy it now actually.
Was there ever any word on whether they were going to release a director's cut for that?
Of what?
Suicide Squad.
There was talk about it in the same way there's been talk about the Snyder Cut of Justice League, but I don't think you'll see it.
All right. Okay.
Unless maybe the only reason you might is it could be something, because obviously there's a cost associated with doing it, but now that Warner's have got their own or launching their own streaming service, it's the kind of thing they might do for that, because it would get people to subscribe, so you never know. But I wouldn't mind seeing David Ayer's early cut, because it was a very different tone apparently, much grittier.
Right, so we'll be going to see Birds of Prey, because coming out at the cinema this week is
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Excuse me.
With new effects, because Sonic looked in the first trailer.
I really wanted them to make it with how he was in that first trailer.
I'm sure there'll be a cut where you can enjoy that in its own.
It had all the tone of like Bob Hoskins doing Super Mario. Something so bad that you just want to go and see it.
Yeah, but it's a big gamble that they actually will. So I talked up going to see Cats, and then when I actually thought about it, it's like, do I actually want to spend money to go and see something which is that bad? And the answer, amazingly enough, was no, I don't. So I still don't think I'm going to see Sonic the Hedgehog with the new special effects, but nevertheless, it does look slightly less tragic.
Was there a big demand for a Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Is it half term? Is it? It seems like a strange release.
It's not. It's till the week after it's half term. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Sonic the Hedgehog's out on Friday with Jim Carrey, apparently.
James Marsden.
And James Marsden, yeah. Also out on Friday is Emma, a new adaptation of Jane Austen's novel with Anya Taylor-Joy. So if you like Jane Austen adaptation, and there's been plenty of them, I quite like the one with Gwyneth Paltrow from the late 90s.
If you say so.
And actually Clueless, which is a brilliant adaptation of Emma.
Yes.
and a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. So yes.
God, that just brings to mind.
No, it's really funny. It's a really funny film. So Emma's out as well on Friday.
Okay, good stuff. Moving on disc-wise, 4K and Blu-ray.
We've got Abominable, which Kaz is currently reviewing. That should be up, I guess, probably tomorrow. And it's one of those funny things, isn't it, where you get two films about the same thing, because we've got Abominable, and also Missing Link, which came out about the same time. One about the Abominable Snowman, of course. One about Sasquatch, actually. But he wants to go and find his lost relatives who were the Abominable Snowmen, or Yetis. So Abominable, I think, is more traditional CGI animation, whereas Missing Link's a Leica production, so it's stop motion animation. I've actually seen Missing Link, which is really good, and the animation is absolutely amazing in it. I know little about Abominable, and have not seen it. So we'll let Kaz have the last word.
Well, Kaz has reviewed it, and I'm just putting it up on the homepage now.
Oh, you've read the review then? So what do you think of it?
Oh, I haven't read it yet.
Oh. I hope you've proofed it.
I don't proof these things.
No, you don't, do you?
Yeah, we've got
right, anyway. So that's out. And also Joker. Just in time for its Oscar win tonight as for Best Actor, I suspect.
Yes, but will it get Best Picture?
No.
Don't think so.
No, it won't.
No.
I'm pretty... Well, I was talking about it. I would be fairly sure at this point that 1917 is going to get Best Picture and Best Director, having won the BAFTA, the Golden Globe, and the Producers Guild and Directors Guild Awards. It looks like it's a shoo-in at this point, but we'll see.
Yeah, you'd have to go with that. But we'll come back to that in a sec.
But Joker's out, and it's a cracking disc. I have to say, I've had it for a couple of weeks now from the States, and it's a 4K DI. It looks superb. It's got amazing photography in it, really gorgeous. Really nails that sort of early 80s look. Good Dolby Atmos soundtrack as well. Got Dolby Vision, I think, as well. It's a cracking 4K disc. So if you're a fan of the film, and I did enjoy it more the second time round than I did the first, then that's one for you.
There you go.
Okay, and Kaz scored above all 8, picture quality 8, sound quality 9, and overall 8, and the movie 7.
Okay.
I should have done that in order, but
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Then on Blu-ray, on regular Blu-ray, we have Little Monsters, Bliss, and Ready or Not.
Okay.
Of those, Ready or Not's the one I know is the one with the girls at a wedding, and it's a family player game where they're hunting her down to kill her, and the girl playing it, I don't remember her name, but she's a spitting image of Margot Robbie, so I always get her too confused. I think they're both Australian as well, but they're out. I think 2 of those are competition prizes, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, Bliss and Little Monsters are both competition prizes. And then on the TV and streaming front, we've got Homeland final season starting on E4. I gave up with Homeland after season 2, to be honest.
It was really weird, tonally all over the shop.
What season are they up to now?
28.
I think it's like 6, season 5 or 6, I think. It's been around for a while now. Could be even more than that. I think they rang that one out well past its sell-by date, but...
Well, yeah, it once they killed Damian Lewis, I mean, that was reasonable. Oh, yeah.
Season 3, I think, wasn't it?
That seemed like a really good arc, and then no, keep cracking away at it. I think my dad enjoyed it, so for all I know, he's going to keep at it. So good luck to him on that.
I've got loads to catch up on at the minute. So projector back in place, JVC back in place last night. So I got all the way caught up again with Picard.
I haven't seen Friday's episode yet.
No, I'm not going to say anything about it other than strong start. Let's see where it goes, because I'm starting to get inklings of Discovery.
I was more thinking, are we ever going to get into bloody space in this show?
Yeah.
Come on, get him in a spaceship, for God's sake.
Yeah, there's the introduction of a few characters at the minute. I'm thinking, right, okay, not sure about this, but we'll see.
I was thinking, this is...
What I'm finding difficult at the minute, I don't know, maybe it'll blossom a little bit, but for a season about Picard, there's not a lot. There's not a lot going on with Picard, is there, really?
What service is this on?
Amazon.
All right, check it out. I've been trying to work through kind of backlog of things on old films on Netflix and stuff on iPlayer that came up over Christmas. Foolishly watched all of Dracula.
As I was saying to last week, Mark, I suddenly discovered that every single episode of The X-Files is on Amazon. So I was just pottering through my favourite Monster of the Week episodes for most of last week. So, yes. And annoyingly, I missed Elementary on Now TV. So there's 5 seasons of that on Amazon. So I'm up to, ironically, where I'd got to anyway. And I'm assuming they'll add season 6 or 7 eventually, and we'll work it out from there. So, all good.
I quite liked Richard Hammond's Big. That's been really quite entertaining.
I don't have access. I don't think I have access to that.
And
so.
the new series,
series
of Air Crash Investigation as well has been really quite good. Ed.
Shut up.
And I was watching Forged in Fire yesterday.
I made my dad watch an episode of Forged in Fire earlier this afternoon, just because he needs more mental trauma in his life. So I do miss those things. I don't miss them necessarily enough to be handing over quite a lot of money to Sky, especially as I say, both my television area and my dish are out of action at the moment. Actually, I'm quite glad I didn't have those bolted to the side of the house in time for this storm. So we'll hopefully now move on to. I'll try and get those up and running in the next week or so.
I watched a documentary series on Netflix about the assassination of Malcolm X, which is quite interesting.
I saw that pop up. Again, it's been added to my list. My list just gets longer and longer.
I know, it's terrible. I've tried to make this concerted effort to try and just kind of whittle it down in places. I tried for about a week to see if I could watch one thing off it every single day. And I got fairly far, but then you end up saying, I've just got half an hour. Well, I'll just add things to my list for that half an hour. And then you roll back downhill.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got to the point last night, I finished 2 episodes of Picard. And I was sitting with the projector running, sound system up running, and I looked at my watch and it was 10 o'clock at night, and I thought, no, I better switch it off.
Cup of cocoa, off to bed.
Saturday night, and I'm thinking, oh no, I don't think I could go a full film now.
The problem is for me that it's not just TV content. It's just sooner or later, I'll look at the stack of record-shaped cardboard boxes on my other sofa, which have been turning up thanks to Postman Pat throughout the week. Is I suppose what to listen to some of the records I bought. So then everything gets shut off and switch over to music. So I'm pulled in that different direction as well. So.
Well, confession time. I went through your profile on Spotify, Ed.
Mm-hmm. Looking you were going to say Tinder for a second.
No,
I'm on Grindr, mate.
Hang on Grindr. No, I've been looking at some of your old playlists because I was looking for some inspiration, and
some of them are 10 years plus.
Yeah, well, the one I found was Starred, and a lot of that's sort of 2010 to 2012.
Oh yeah, but remember, Starred used to be just how you noted. It was a case of, I like that, and then you could simply press a star icon next to it, and it just accrued over time, because I then used that as a means of actually then going back, tracking back and listening to the album, and a lot of those things I own on vinyl.
Yeah, no, that's some real stuff that I'd long forgotten about, that I found in that playlist, and we've really been enjoying it, and moving on from there to the albums and stuff, so yeah.
Oh, good. Well, there you go. I'd completely forgotten that existed. So, I mean, I very rarely use Spotify, of course, because I've got Qobuz and Tidal tied into Room, and so Spotify sort of dies on the vine. I think I'm still paying for Deezer as well, because I'm financially brilliant at that sort of stuff. So,
see, I largely use Spotify to play Aquabats, which my nephew insists upon while we're playing Minecraft. So,
I have a friend, and he essentially has it. So. Yeah, I do have a friend. He's real. I don't think
you just can't see him.
He always used to have a Spotify playlist, which is essentially just Bomb the Bass's Mega Blast on loop, which he'd wheel out for when he had to win at a piece of a particular level or part of computer gaming. It's just fire up Mega Blast because it makes me better. So I don't know whether there is actually measurable performance increases from doing so. It's a great piece of music though. So
Enter the Dragon, one of my favourite albums of all time, actually, on the bass.
So yeah, it's it's more the fact that I don't set out to watch as much television as some of you guys do, but nonetheless, it's interesting you say I'll get to 10 p.m. It's like, do I want to watch something else, or do I actually want to turn some screens off because it helps me sleep better, and I'll listen to some music. So
that's what I did last night. I switched the projector off and I sat and listened to some music, which I haven't done in such a long time. I actually sat down and paid attention to what I was listening to. Background music got on all the time, but actually sitting down between a set of speakers and listening, I haven't done it for such a long time, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's an underrated pleasure. Honestly.
And you're doing absolutely nothing else at the time. You just
absolutely nothing else, just trying to stay awake.
In my case, I'm usually drinking, but I can multitask to that level. So but no, I don't do. Something I want to listen to, I'll sit and listen to it. It's great.
So that guest house that collapsed has now made it onto Sky News.
Has it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Was anyone in it at the time?
I don't know.
Well, presumably, if part of it fell off first,
it was evacuated. Yeah.
Yes, we have vacancies.
Did I discuss this in the recording or not? I'm not sure if I did. Anyway, the guest house in my hometown, the rivers flooded with the weather and all the rest of it. Took the side of the building off, and the rest of it collapsed, as it does when that happens. Quite a shame for the people that own it.
A charming 2-bed semi with river views now.
Well, it was actually a bistro and a bed and breakfast guest house all in one type thing. So there you go. Right, moving on. It's the evening for the Oscars. It doesn't start till 12:30. I am not staying up for it. I've no interest in award shows. I'll look at the results tomorrow morning, and I think we can all guess what their results will be. Or have a pretty good stab at it. But what I wanted to do here was have the AVForums Oscars. So not necessarily talk about the stuff that was nominated by the Academy, but things that we've seen this year over the last 12 months that we think makes the grade in certain areas. We don't have to fill in all the areas, because I'm just making excuses now because I haven't filled in all the areas. But things like Best Film, Best Director, Cinematography, Actor, Supporting Actor. Do we say Actress now? Or is it Actor?
it's still the award is still Best Supporting Actress.
Right.
Although generally you would say these days just actor because you
Yes,
want
that's what I thought. Yeah. Best score, best special effects, editing, that kind of thing. So, what do we think? Are we going to be different? Because I was looking at the list, and I don't think I'm that different to probably what's going to happen. So, best film for me, 1917 by far this year. It's not been a strong year for films, I've got to say.
You did see Ford versus Ferrari, didn't you?
I did. I saw that. I don't think it's an Oscar winner though. It's really, really good, and it's
something that wins sound mix. Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's a throwback to how films used to be told. You know, that the old narrative style, which I really enjoyed. So I don't think it's best film. I think 1917 it does enough different in terms of it's a strong. The thing is, it's not like the whole one cut thing, which is really, really well done, and it's something different, and it's why Roger Deakins will win for cinematography, because it looks absolutely beautiful, even though it's, you know, wartime and mud and all the rest of it. It still looks gorgeous. I mean, with the flares and stuff and shadow, the way he plays with shadows. He did it in Skyfall with a fight in Singapore.
I didn't realise he'd only won one Oscar.
Yeah,
Skyfall.
No, sorry, not Skyfall. Blade Runner.
Yeah,
2049. That's what it was, wasn't it?
And then obviously Sam Mendes, because if you have best film, I always think if it's the best film, then the director has to win best director. That's the way I've always done it.
Much to Ridley Scott's annoyance, that is not always the case.
No.
He was really pissed off when Gladiator won best film, but he didn't win best director.
Yeah, so I think 1917, Sam Mendes, Roger Deakins. So there you go, film director,
those
cinematographer.
three. Yeah, I think that's going to.
I would say actor Phoenix absolutely for Joker.
Yeah,
that's a shoe-in. Best supporting actor. I'm not sure on that one. I'm going to come back to that one. Actress, again, these are things where I'm not really that sure. Best editing, again, I think that would have to go to 1917. Just the way that it is edited. I mean, some of the edits are pretty obvious.
How can you give it best editing? It's not edited.
It is edit.
They are edits in the sense of where they merge the two takes.
As an art form, and editing's about telling the story. So editing doesn't mean it has to have 16 different cuts in a scene. Editing's about telling the story, and I think it's really well done the way that it feels like one long continuous take, which it wasn't. And
it was a series of long continuous takes.
Yes, but they're still edited together, and it still tells the story. So for me, I would give that best edit, and I'm the boss.
Yeah,
The editor.
I'm the editor.
I've seen nothing this year, but what I would say is everyone I talk to who's seen Parasite speaks very, very highly of that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to be Mr. Cynic here, but we are kind of perhaps in a slight cycle of Hollywood wanting to pat itself on the back about diversity and this kind of thing, and with a thoroughly undiverse field put forward, I think maybe something like maybe Best Director for Bong Joon-ho, I don't think is out of the realms of possibility. I think 1917 will probably get Best Picture, obviously. But no, I wouldn't be shocked if there was kind of a slight curveball for Best Director.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow morning when I wake up. I look at my iPad and go,
and shrug, and that'll be that.
All right, so we better go to Stephen, because I'm sure Steve's got supporting actor, actress. So at the minute, I'm really struggling.
I would agree with you. I mean, of the films I saw at the cinema, I definitely thought 1917 was the best. I enjoyed it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it kind of it meandered a bit. It felt a bit self-indulgent.
You've just reminded me. Yeah. So absolutely, Brad Pitt, best supporting actor.
But Brad, I thought, was fantastic in it.
He stole it,
and he's long overdue an award, in my opinion. He's been delivering solid work for years, and as a general rule, he's like Leonardo DiCaprio. They don't do crap films. They tend to pick and choose interesting interesting productions and interesting, films to do, and they don't generally just do paycheck gigs. So,
with the exception of Ad Astra.
Well, that wasn't a paycheck gig. I mean,
yeah, it's still not.
And
a
that
good
wasn't.
Film.
No, but it was an interesting film. He wasn't doing a Marvel movie or he was doing something different. And both of those actors tend to do. And you can look through their filmography, and you'll be hard pushed to find something that's pure shit. That there'll be stuff in there. It may not always work, but generally it's at least interesting. And Brad Pitt's, because he's good looking, doesn't get I think the credit he deserves
What was
as
it,
an
that
actor.
line? He's a character actor trapped in a leading man's
Yeah,
body.
exactly. And he's a good actor. He's a really good actor. So I'd like to see him win because I think he's long overdue. For Best Actress, it's not going to be the case. Unfortunately, it'll be Renee Zellweger for Judy, but I would love to see Scarlett Johansson win for Marriage Story because she's fantastic in it. Absolutely fantastic. And she's, again, people forget she's a really good actress when she's in the right role.
On my watch list.
Yeah, no, you should watch it. It's really good. Joaquin Phoenix, I think, Joker, fair enough. I'm going to give him that one. I mean, Adam Driver's great in Marriage Story. Caprio's good in Once Time in America, Once Time in Hollywood. But yeah, I think we can all agree Joaquin gave a performance that is the entire film.
Out of his skin.
It was the film, wasn't it? Really, I mean, they would have without his performance. It's a completely different movie. Best Supporting Actress. Based upon what I've seen, and to be fair, out of the nominees, I've only seen one of them. You've seen Richard Jewell, haven't you? So Kathy Bates is nominated for that. But Laura Dern is great in Marriage Story. So, and again, a bit like Brad, she's been doing solid work for a long time. So I think it's probably her time to win.
Cruelly overlooked for Jurassic Park. So
yeah. Cinematography, 1970. I think it's going to be a shoe in there.
Yeah. Best score. I'm going to go with John Williams. For Star Wars because it was a greatest hits compilation.
Exactly,
basically.
and it's like an award for a body of work, isn't it? You know, the 9 films. And
the music's always been good, even if the prequels and this trilogy haven't been great. The music has been fantastic. I mean, Duel of the Fates
is the best piece of Star Wars music.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he gets it absolutely from me. Best special effects, I would probably go with Endgame.
Yeah, I think that would be my choice as well. Where there are so many. I mean, it's such a huge movie, isn't it? And there are so many effects in it. And I think Marvel has really built up a great. I mean, their films tend to be effects heavy by their very nature, and they deliver solid effects. So much so that you tend to take it for granted now. I think, which is so. I certainly prefer the effects in Endgame over, say, Star Wars. Or 1917 is basically wire removal, isn't it, mostly? And The Irishman is some slightly dodgy.
I was about to say you don't want to nominate suspiciously young-looking people moving with the speed and vigor of a 78-year-old as your
editing. I would go for Ford versus Ferrari, I suspect.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
what about screenplays? Anything on screenplays? Because
well, I'd give that Ford versus Ferrari because I thought it was a nice throwback to how stories used to be told, how films used to be narratively put together, and I really liked that because it was open to everybody. It wasn't just for petrol heads like me and Ed. Anybody could go into that and enjoy it for the human story that was there, and it was a true story as well. And yes, with true stories,
True-ish.
They will amalgamate certain characters and change plot points and that kind of thing just for dramatic effect. But the majority of that story that was told was true, and it was an exceptional story and exceptional characters that we'll never see the like of again. I don't think. Certainly, those times.
Not in automotive.
No.
But there are other possibilities, I suppose. So,
So I'd give that one.
I think original screenplay, I would probably pick Marriage Story. Again, I think it's a really great film. Although I have a horrible feeling it would go to. I haven't seen Knives Out, but I know Ryan Johnson might get original. I haven't seen Knives Out yet, so
I have. Not that great.
Not as clever as he thinks he is.
No, absolutely.
Are you still holding that grudge?
No, I went in with an open mind. I actually wanted to enjoy it because I don't think there's been that many good whodunits in the last decade or so. So I was actually looking forward to something a bit different, and it wasn't. And there wasn't anything there that I thought was particularly great. I mean, it's an all right film. It's an enjoyable hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. Well acted, some belly laughs and so on. But I was expecting a bit more, having seen the trailer and the build up and the hype and everything else, and it didn't work in that respect. But it's still a good film.
I think adapted screenplay. I guess Joker is an adaptation, isn't it? So that might well be. So it's an interesting take on an established comic book character. Sorry, I should say.
Yeah.
Comic book character. and it certainly was a unique perspective on the comic book movie, and for that alone, it probably deserves credit. For doing something so completely different with the comic book character. I mean, I know they've done that kind of thing in comics, but certainly in movie adaptations up until now, they've been more generally. I mean, I suppose the Nolan stuff was grounded to a degree in reality, or it lost that a little bit towards the end when they had Catwoman in a pair of high heels. But this is really taking it to the into the King of Comedy Taxi Driver territory, isn't it? So from that point of view alone, it's certainly worth recognition.
Yeah, and it visually and the way it was put together as well, it really does. It was a film I came out wanting to love, but at the same time, it's it's not a film you're going to watch over and over and over again. But for some reason, it looked in it. You came out smelling of it, if you know what I mean. It's like, what am I trying to say? It
seeps its way into your pores, doesn't it? And you think about it. On second viewing, I found I got a lot more out of it than the first time. And I think it is a film that has quite a few layers to it, which makes it interesting from the point of view of thinking about it afterwards.
Yeah. Right. So I wanted to wrap up on this just by pointing towards at least two films that have been nominated that are on streaming services, Netflix. So you got Marriage Story and you got The Irishman,
and the Two Popes.
And the Two Popes. Sorry, yeah. So there's three films, and it's been a particularly good year in terms of nominations for films being released in alternative ways, like on streaming services and so on. So, is this the future? Is this where things are going to happen because you have the luxury of telling longer narrative stories? You can take your time. I mean, it's a shame Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's not going to pick up any major awards, because I thought it was perfect Tarantino. I thought it was a really interesting film, even though you know what you're getting with Tarantino. It's you're going to get conversations that go absolutely nowhere, but take up a hell of a lot of time. That kind of thing would probably suit streaming services, his style of doing things. So where do we see things going, Mark?
I think as kind of Hollywood itself, and with particularly as it's centered on kind of award ceremonies and that kind of thing, as it looks for more kind of diverse stories, I think the place where you get the most freedom is certainly going to be in the streaming services. So that kind of offers an avenue for, you think of with Scorsese and The Irishman, where he's talking in one of the interviews about just they never even considered time. They never even considered the length of it. It was just, it will take what it will take. And so he's obviously been afforded that kind of freedom. And I think you're going to see far more kind of, interesting voices come from streaming platforms rather than the kind of traditional Hollywood fare that goes through the studio system. So I definitely think it's maybe not a total game changer, but we're far from, or we've broken the back of that kind of stigma where it's a case of, it's a film on Netflix, so this was obviously something so bad that nobody else wanted it, and there was a time where they were just picking up awful things that couldn't be released in any other manner, and so it was almost like the straight to DVD version of something.
Are you suggesting that the Velocipasta showing on Amazon, where a bloke gains a priest gains the ability to turn into a velociraptor?
No, I'm saying that some things are too far ahead of their time for the mainstream audience to understand.
No, I appreciate that. I did try and watch it. It's absolute shite.
Yeah, but I think having three big titles like this, Irishman, Marriage Story, and The Two Popes, it like you say, Mark, it gives it some legitimacy now, and it's a place that creatives are maybe not scared to go towards, because I think Adam Sandler was the big put off, was it? They just threw as much money as they could.
But he did Uncut Gems.
But then he has Uncut Gems, yeah. So
and again, another actually that was cruelly overlooked, I have to say, by the Academy. But that's another. Netflix have been guilty in the past of buying in films, frankly, that weren't going to get distributed anyway because they weren't very good. But they've also now invested a lot of money in developing their own product. High quality product. They're kind of following, in some respects, they're following the same playbook that Miramax did in the late 90s, which was, going for award friendly productions. And they're getting, even if they don't necessarily win Best Picture this year, they have already won a number of awards last year with Roma, So this is the second year where they're starting to do really well in terms of nominations and probably some awards as well. But also, I think that they're making films that I'm not sure The Irishman would necessarily have got a theatrical release.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And Marriage Story, lower budget, more dramas, the kind of things that just don't get. If Netflix hadn't made Marriage Story available for me to watch on their streaming service, the chances are I wouldn't have even seen it or been able to see it because it wouldn't have been playing the local multiplex, and so I'd have missed out on a great film. So, from my perspective, I think what we're going to see is a blurring of the traditional release schedule. So we're going to move towards a day and date, all platform release of product. I think it'd be, you can go to the cinema if you want to do the cinema experience. You can stream it, buy it, whatever. There'll be alternative. But ultimately, I think that's what we're heading towards. And the traditional, cinema release followed by some kind of streaming or download or disc release 3 months later is already evaporating. The time between the theatrical release and streaming, is very narrow, particularly if it's a Netflix production of their own. There's only a few weeks in it sometimes. But even disc releases are coming out 2 months after they've been at the cinema sometimes. So it's, I think ultimately, from the point of view of the studio, I guess, you make a film, you want to get your money back as quickly as possible. So the faster the better, by any means necessary. And I think generally it's been the theatre chains that have resisted films being available in other formats at the same time. I think over time that will change.
But you mentioned Tarantino there, Phil.
Yeah.
What I do genuinely think, if shall we say, in the same way that football managers tend to kind of retire into international management, Netflix seems like the kind of place where Tarantino could be given absolute carte blanche. And I'd love to see someone like him do just like a kind of series of, kind of vignettes, something like that, not have to look at a complete full feature or something like that. If he did a series of small stories, an hour long, something like that, maybe an hour 20 max. And, there's so much scope for that kind of thing. I do think maybe short films is the kind of thing that you might see more expanded for some of the younger voices that aren't kind of getting out into theatres and stuff like that. And yeah, those kind of platforms really do offer something different if they want to expand into those spheres.
An entire series of Love, Death and Robots, each one done by a veteran director.
Yes.
That would be brilliant. I'm not being facetious on that.
That's quite possible, actually. Because Fincher's already been involved in that, and Tim Miller. So there's, they've got some sizable names already involved. So who knows? That could well be something that happens. I mean, Fincher's next film is a Netflix production, Mank. Obviously, Michael Bay's most recent film was a Netflix production.
Yeah. So
there's a move. Established directors seem to be moving to Netflix because of the creative freedom they're being offered, and along with sizable budgets. I think 6 Underground was 150 million, so it wasn't like it was cheap.
Bloody
I'm not saying it was good.
Yes.
It's the first film in a while that I switched off after about 15 minutes.
I stuck it out to the end, but it's not a classic.
Yeah, but if they release it on a disc with pristine picture and sound, you'll be there.
As sure as night follows day.
Quite an interesting thing that was starting to develop and has now been put to bed was the way that Marvel were introducing a lot of new TV series, Steve, on Netflix. And I didn't watch any of them, but it seemed to be feeding into what they were doing through the different film phases and so on, and there was lots of cross-referencing and so on. So I noticed that one of the trailers that was shown at the Super Bowl was the lineup for Disney Plus in terms of Marvel. Yeah. So it looks like they're going to be throwing quite a bit of cash towards that and trying to build that out like they did with the previous Netflix stuff.
Well, these Disney Plus shows are interesting because they are literally extensions of the movies. They're being shot with the same people, like the Loki show is Tom Hiddleston. They have budgets to match the films, and their plots will be integral to the actual films as well. So, for example, as far as I'm aware, the plot of WandaVision, which is the show with Scarlet Witch and Vision, so WandaVision, the plot of that's going to lead directly into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is a brilliant title. And apparently, although the director of that left a couple of weeks ago, Scott Dickerson, they are apparently courting Sam Raimi to direct it, which I think would be an awesome choice. These shows are going to be a part of the plots of the movies. So essentially, to get the full story, you're going to need to watch the shows as well as the films. So this is really interesting, and a really interesting.
Not without risk.
No, not without risk. But then again, people would have told you 10 years ago, the idea of having these interconnected movies leading to a big team up was also risky, given that at the time Marvel were using B-list characters that most people hadn't heard of. So it's an interesting approach. But what is really interesting is that these aren't really. They aren't second class, because up until now, if you watch a Marvel TV show, they're basically been treated as second class citizens. They haven't had the film stars from the movies. They haven't had the same kind of budgets. These are going to have the stars from the films. They're going to have the budgets of the films. So they're going to look and sound like the movies, as well as have stories that interconnect. So it's a brave move. It's an interesting move, and so far, if you take a look at The Mandalorian, it's paid off gangbusters for Disney.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because production-wise, it's very, very difficult now to tell a lot of these TV series from the actual films, because they're all shot on the same cameras, they're all edited in the same way, they're all visual effects-wise done the same way. I mean, I haven't seen Mandalorian yet, but I've seen a couple of clips of the special effects, and you think, well, that's a TV series, and it looks like grade A film material.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does. Again, it's like not only is we talking about streaming services making movies that are doing well on awards, but the production values on TV shows have reached a point now where the two, there is. I mean, when we were kids, it was obvious when it was a TV show, but
Like
these
Seven.
days, yeah, quite. These days there are shows that have cinema quality production values, and like Mark was saying, you can do a lot more without the constraints of, basically if you're making a movie, you've got a time constraint. You don't really want it to be longer than 2 hours because you can get more screenings in. And you have to worry about your rating because you want a PG-13 to get the most people to come and see it, because you're basically targeting, for teenagers. Whereas if you're on a streaming service, that's not an issue. You have greater freedom in terms of rating. You have greater freedom in terms of the time you can take to do it. So
that's not necessarily a good thing, though, sometimes.
It does lead to laxness.
It does lead to a lot of padding out too. There's quite a few Netflix shows that I can, where I think it's 13 episodes, but they could have done it in 10 or even 8. So shorter than, I don't necessarily want them to pad it out and string it out for 13 episodes if they don't need to. Tell the story you want to tell in as long as time as you need to tell it, but don't. There's quite a few times. I'm thinking of Stranger Things, season 2. That whole episode where she buggers off to Chicago, it was to hang out with her. That episode should not have been in the show, because normally there are 8 episodes. That was 9, and then last season was 8. And it just struck me as either being an attempt to set something up for a later season or just an unnecessary padding out episode. So, as long as they're disciplined in their approach to writing the shows, and don't just think, we can do as long as we like. We'll take ages. Yeah, obviously you still want to tell a coherent, tight story, but not being restricted by rating is always a big plus, I think.
Okay, so that's about as much time as we have for this evening's podcast. But if you've got any thoughts on the Oscars, because you'll know the results at the time of listening to this podcast. We don't, because it happens afterwards. But what were your thoughts on the Oscars? What were your thoughts on our selections? What about yourself? What films did you see in the last year that were ignored by the Academy but you thought should have been highlighted, or actors or actresses or score and so on? Add your suggestions to the comments section underneath this podcast on YouTube and the forums. And all I need to do now is thank Ed Selley.
I'm still Spartacus.
Steve Withers.
No, I'm still Spartacus.
And Mark Botwright.
No, I'm still Spartacus.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and videos. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos on the latest product launches and reviews. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.